Once again, thank everyone for coming. Again, I'm overwhelmed that people come out at night to hear a shir. Baruch Hashem, feeling for learning, and Khilah Marine Park is a very strong one. And once again, I want to thank the board for A, initiating the shir, and B, making sure that it works by calling appropriate people and so on. I think that it's a very helpful way to encourage each other to come together to learn. When we learn as a tzibur, it creates special schusim, Be'ez Hashem, that should help all of us, nachas from our children, parnasa, and good health, etc., etc.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. That's so nice. Thank you so much. The sponsor this evening is David Waldrum and family, one of the newer additions to our board, and I guess semi-newer additions to the shul. Here definitely less than 10 years. And Baruch Hashem, we still have people who know what the shul is all about and are coming. Not yet coming in droves, but we're getting there. Be'ez Hashem, people who have come, including David and family, others who have come over the last couple of years. We really appreciate that you appreciate what we're trying to accomplish here. The shir and the sushi is sponsored with Zecher Nishmas of both sets of the Waldrum grandparents. Did I get that right? Okay. And the Shamash Aliyahs. I always say the best thing is not just to sponsor food, it's to sponsor the whole shir. And all these people learning all together is really a tremendous schus. We're learning about Megillas Rus and what we've dubbed the mission, where we began last time by asking the question on Elimelech, who not only was considered the Parnes Hador, an Osher Gadol, a very wealthy person, he was also considered the Gadol Hador. Number of diyukim that we presented in the psukim to show the chashivus of Elimelech. And yet, when a famine came by B'mei Shvot HaShoftim, in these days where the Shoftim were being judged by the people, perhaps incorrectly and unfairly, it caused a ra'av, a famine in the land, and this rich Gadol Hador, because of tsaros ayin, because of stinginess, he left and deserted his people, and we wondered aloud, how can that be? How can it be that such a special person, a Gadol Hador, can abandon his people in their time of need? And we set up the idea that the Balei Musar often say, what's sometimes called the Aleph Beis of Musar, that there's a conscious and a subconscious. There's an intellectual level and there's an emotional level to each person. The heart and the mind might be close, but they're really very distant from each other. We understand that great people have to be put on a pedestal. We understand how great they are. And therefore, intellectually, it's impossible for somebody like Elimelech to have sinned and been stingy. Consciously, he could not have been stingy. However, everyone is a human being, and therefore, even the greatest of people can have what's sometimes referred to as a dake dakos, a tiny, tiny, slight amount of a negative attitude, something wrong, which can cause them to act and behave in an improper way. So at worst, Elimelech had this feeling, tiny feeling deep down in his subconscious, in his emotions of tsaros ayin. But consciously, there must have been another reason why he left Eretz Yisrael. There must have been something else going on in his mind, and we tried to use Chazal to determine what that might be. And we understood, based on various Chazals and various Mefarshim, specifically Elimelech, he understood that to him should come the kingship. It was his job to create a Malchus in Khilah Yisrael, something which eventually happened by Malchus Beis David and so on, but here he's trying to accomplish it a number of generations earlier. And he had the yichus for this, as we pointed out. He was a direct descendant of Peretz, Melech, Poretz, Geder. He was a descendant of Miriam, who's called Ephrosi, and he's called Ephros. He also was a direct descendant of Yehuda, and his father was none other than Nachshon ben Aminadab. His wife Naomi's grandfather was Nachshon ben Aminadab. As such, he had a tremendous yichus, a tremendous background of Malchus genes. And therefore he decided that he had to try to create this Malchus to solve the problem at the time. The problem of the time was, by B'mei Shvot HaShoftim, that people judged the judges. When a judge would pronounce someone guilty of a crime, they have to pay. So the person, the defendant would turn right back to the judge and say, you're a bigger sinner than me. You're not an innocent person. I don't have to listen to you. And without a government in place law and order, with shotrim to back up the shoftim, there was no way to keep people in check, and ish kol hayosher be'enov yaseh. Everyone did whatever it was that they wanted to do. As such, by Hira'av, there was a punishment that Hashem created this famine for the people to get them to do tshuva. So Elimelech understood consciously, intellectually, that his mission as the Gadol Hador, as the Parnes Hador, was to end the Ra'av by ending the sinning. How would he do it? Not through a tshuva me'ahava, but rather a tshuva me'yira. If he's able to provide a government that will back the leaders, back the judges, a king, a kingdom, such will effectively remove the sins of the people because of the fear, because of the judges telling them, you're right, you're wrong, and there would be some sort of a follow-through. He would force a quasi-tshuva over Klal Yisrael. And as we concluded last time, this was Elimelech's grand plan. This is what I have dubbed the mission, his conscious mission, which is a very noble cause fitting of a Gadol Hador. The question that we left off with was, why did he have to go to Moab, of all places, to accomplish this mission? What was so special about Moab? The Gemara tells us in Maseches Bava Kama, Daf Lamed Ches Amud Beis, that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to destroy the people of Moab. He went about destroying the people of Midian and made some sort of a kal v'chomer that surely he should destroy the people of Moab. But Hashem told him not to do it because Shtei pridos tovos yeshli lahotzi mehen. There are two beautiful birds that I have to extract from Moab and from Ammon. Rus ha-Moaviyah v'Naamah ha-Ammonis. Naamah was eventually married to Shlomo HaMelech. Their son Rehoboam became the king after Shlomo HaMelech. Rus, 4 generations earlier, of course, was the great-grandmother of David HaMelech, the father of Shlomo HaMelech. These two birds, Gioreses, if we could use that term, they needed to be extracted from Moab. And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu was told many generations before, you can't wipe them out. We need to get to those two special neshamas. I proposed, and I later found in quotes of a sefer by Rav Moshe David Valley. Rav Moshe David Valley was a Kabbalist. I don't usually delve in that. He was a Talmud of the Ramchal, the author of Mesilas Yesharim. But he says, and I also wanted to suggest something along the lines of, Elimelech, besides being a Gadol Hador, was a Baal HaMesorah. He was an individual who had access to the complete Torah Shebaal Peh, as a Gadol Hador should. And there were many things that Moshe Rabbeinu was told in Har Sinai, and there were private conversations that Moshe had with HaKadosh Baruch Hu that not everyone knew about. That wasn't advertised like the Chamisha Chumshei Torah. But the Baalei HaMesorah had access, and therefore Elimelech was very, very aware of this conversation that Moshe Rabbeinu had with HaKadosh Baruch Hu concerning the two birds. And he therefore understood that the antecedents of Melucha were out there in Moab, namely within Rus. He didn't necessarily know the name, that wasn't necessarily said. But there was a neshama out there in Moab, and we know that the Or HaChaim HaKadosh says in Parashas Bereishis that when Adam HaRishon ate from the Eitz Hadas, neshamis went flying out of him, and the Sitra Achra, the Satan, made sure that some of those neshamis ended up within Goyim. Eventually, with those neshamis and those Goyim converting to Judaism, and therefore regaining the connection to Klal Yisrael. So that's what Elimelech needed to find. A neshama that was out there, that after conversion to Yiddishkeit, would be able to be used for Malchus. Which leaves us with 3 basic questions. Number 1, what element of Malchus was there in Moab? What midah was that Elimelech had to look for that embodies Malchus? Number 2, how did an aspect of Malchus get to Moab in that particular neshama? And number 3, how would Elimelech find that neshama in order to bring it on board for his grand plan, for his mission? And we'll take these questions one at a time. What element of Malchus was in Moab? a critical midah of Malchus is Mesiras Nefesh. Malchus requires an added element in everything that it does. Malchus requires a Mesiras Nefesh. A king often has to go beyond the norm. Now sometimes a king is allowed to go beyond normative halacha. The Rambam tells us that the halacha is that a king is allowed to execute a potential rebel, a safek rebel, a mored b'malchus, without taking him to a beis din. We usually can't execute people without going through due process. Hasra, edim, not so a mored b'malchus. A melech, in order to maintain his kingdom, is allowed to kill, even without a beis din. A melech is allowed to take property from people. I think we today call it eminent domain, that a government can take over property of the people. A king can do that. A king can break down walls. If he needs his army to go from one place to another, nothing stands in his way. Melech poretz geder. And perhaps most importantly, a king has to stand up to his people in order to fulfill the word of Hashem. Shaul HaMelech's big crime was that the people convinced him to keep some of the animals. The people convinced him to keep Agag alive a little bit longer. And that was his downfall. Hashem said, do the following, and he was convinced by the people. Well, it's hard to stand up to your people when they're suggesting something that was backed up by logic, and one of the big Talmidei Chachamim of the door was actually advising Shaul to follow them. Very hard. But Shmuel had told Shaul the Dvar Hashem. It takes Mesiras Nefesh. A king has to have Mesiras Nefesh to follow Hashem's words as given to him by the Navi, even against the people. This trait of Mesiras Nefesh is in the genes of a Malchus lineage. David HaMelech was Moser Nefesh when he went and defeated the lion. David HaMelech was Moser Nefesh when he defeated Goliath. It was a scary job. When he was dealing with Shaul, as Shaul continued to try to chase him and to kill him, and he would not kill Shaul. Many times he caught up with Shaul and had to contain himself. Tremendous Mesiras Nefesh. There was a Mesiras Nefesh for David to keep up the friendship, the special friendship, with Yonasan, the son of Shaul. And he kept up that friendship despite the danger. David displayed Mesiras Nefesh. But if we go back even further, to Yehuda, the son of Yaakov Avinu. Yehuda was Moser Nefesh. By Yigash Elov Yehuda. Yehuda approached Yosef, not knowing it was Yosef, in order to save little Binyamin. He took that Mesiras Nefesh and used it. He even used it earlier in his career when trying to save Yosef, who was thrown into the pit. They were going to kill him, sell him to the Yishmaelim. Lo sakenu nefesh, we shouldn't kill him. Yehuda furthermore showed a different type of Mesiras Nefesh. When Tamar was being led away to be executed, and she produced certain simonim to say, the father of the child I'm bearing is the one who gave me these items. Yehuda could have stayed quiet. Nobody knew, except for Tamar, that it was him. And yet he realized, Tzadka mimeni, she's more righteous than me. He admitted his guilt publicly, the Gemara says, like no one else had ever done. No one until that period of time had ever done tshuva publicly like Yehuda did when he could have gotten away with it. That took tremendous Mesiras Nefesh. And in reward for that, Yaakov Avinu in the bracha to Yehuda in Parshas Vayechi says, Lo Yosur Shevet mi Yehuda. Yehuda will always have the Melucha. Yehuda will always be the Melech. In fact, what was the Havamina? That the Chashmonoim, who were Kohanim, Bnei Levi, should become kings. The answer is because they were Moser Nefesh to protect Klal Yisrael. They could have just stayed in their Beis Medrash learning. They were children of the Kohen Gadol, as all Levim and Kohanim basically learned all the time, except for when they did the Avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. They didn't have to pick up swords. They didn't have to try to make the impossible attempt to defeat the Syrian Greek army. Yet they were Moser Nefesh to do so in order to save people from Hellenism. So they felt they deserved to get Malchus. Furthermore, back in the yichus of those who deserved Malchus, Miriam was Moser Nefesh in the first parak of Shmos when she told Paro, I'm sorry, I'm not going to kill all these baby boys that you want me to kill? Vayhi ki yoru hamiyaldus elokim. They feared Hashem. It didn't matter what Paro told them. Vayas lehem botim. And because of that, they were rewarded with different houses. And Rashi says specifically about Miriam, Umalchus mi Miriam. Malchus was the house that was given to Miriam. Midah keneged midah. Because of the Mesiras Nefesh that she had, she was rewarded with an entire kingdom, a lineage of those who had Mesiras Nefesh. Kalev, the husband of Miriam, was Moser Nefesh by the Meraglim. Vayahas, he called out for quiet, and he said, don't listen to what everyone else said, listen to me. The Eretz is Tova Ma'od Ma'od, we should go in. They had a son Chur. Chur was Moser Nefesh when he protested against the Chet HaEgel. He was killed for that. This midah of Mesiras Nefesh is part of the inherent makeup of those who should be kings. It's in their genes. Let's go to another person in this lineage. Tamar. Tamar was the daughter, the Medrash says, of Shem ben Noach. What she did was completely l'shem shamayim in attempting to seduce Yehuda. Rashi tells us, Perek Lamites Pasuk Aleph, that we know that Eshes Potiphar was considered l'shem shamayim in trying to entice Yosef. Amazing. She was a marshas, but she was considered l'shem shamayim in trying to entice Yosef. We know that because of the juxtaposition of that parsha and the parsha of Yehuda and Tamar. Just like Tamar was l'shem shamayim, so too Eshes Potiphar was l'shem shamayim. The obvious one though is Tamar. Tamar operated l'shem shamayim. What was she willing to do? She was willing to give up her own life and burn rather than tell on Yehuda. She didn't want to embarrass Yehuda publicly and kill him in a sense. And therefore she was willing to go to the fire and die in order to not embarrass Yehuda, who we said before already did tshuva as soon as he saw what she was doing. The Medrash tells us the Mesiras Nefesh of Tamar was incredible. Tamar osek biyibum. Tamar was involved in trying to be miyabim with Yehuda. She had already been married to Er and Onan, two sons of Yehuda, and Yehuda didn't want to give Shalom, the third son, to her to do Yibum. The Ramban says again and again, Tamar was a tzadekes. The Ramban also says, in those days, before the giving of the Torah, Yibum could be done with any close relative. So she understood this, apparently, I don't know how, but she understood that, and therefore she chased after Yehuda, thinking, if I can't marry Yehuda's third son, let me marry Yehuda. So she chased after him with Mesiras Nefesh. The Medrash says, Tamar osek b'yibum, v'Hashem osek ba'oro shel Mashiach. Eventually Mashiach came through that union of Tamar and Yehuda, which led to Malchus Beis David, which leads down to Mashiach. Hashem was organizing all this, while Tamar was trying to do the mitzvah of Yibum. Says the Gemara in Sota and Daf Yudam and Beis, just to compound her Mesiras Nefesh. The Gemara asks, how is it possible that Yehuda did not recognize Lo Yoda ki kalosohi? He did not recognize that she was in fact his daughter-in-law. How is it possible that he didn't recognize her? Ki chosisa foneha, because her face was covered. Asks the Gemara, Mishum de chosisa foneha choshva lezona, because her face was covered, he thought she was a zona? We don't have to explain that that's not a good way for a zona to do business if she's coming with a covered face. No one's going to be interested. Says the Gemara, Amr Belazar, shechasa foneha beveis chameha. She covered her face when she was living in the house of Yehuda. This is a level of tznius. The Mishnah Berurah points out this is something we're not allowed, we're not supposed to do today. Women today, their faces are supposed to be uncovered, their hands are supposed to be uncovered. However, it seems that in the time of the Imahos, they were super tznius, in the sense that when they were in the home, they never had their face uncovered. Therefore, in the household, says the Gemara, Lo yada ki chalasui, he had no idea what she looked like, and therefore when he saw her be'ein haderech on the road, v'yakshevel lezona, he didn't know that it was his daughter-in-law because he had never seen her actual face. Says the Das Zakenim on the Psukim, with Yehuda meeting Tamar, something that a lot of people don't know, based on two different chazals. The Dasikanim says that it was because of the Mesiras Nefesh that she had in trying to seduce Yehuda. Because of that, and she pleaded with Hashem, why will I not be zocheh lahotzi chacham migufa shel tzaddik zeh? I will not be able to have children for this tzaddik, because Yehuda saw her and turned away. He wanted to leave the scene. Miyad sholach la Kodesh Baruch Hu Michael. Kodesh Baruch Hu sent a malach v'achziro to return him back. Vayet oleh, and the malach pushed him onto her. Al yidei malach. It happened through a malach. The malach pushed Yehuda back. It wasn't something that Yehuda necessarily wanted to do, but because Tamar was Moshe Nefesh to go through this and to act as a zona, therefore, in that schus, Hashem had a malach push Yehuda back to her. The Mesiras Nefesh she had was because it was against her natural inclination. She was such a tznuah, and nevertheless she had to act like a zona. Therefore, she was zocheh to malchus through that very act, and therefore her first child was Peretz. The midah of Melech Poretz Geder was displayed by him as he pushed his way out to beat his brother into the world. The first boy put his hand out. They put a little string around it. Then the hand went back, and Peretz, boom, she just jumped out. Melech Poretz Geder was part of the essence of who he was. It was in his genes. And this Mesiras Nefesh is a defining characteristic of royalty. So all of these people embodied the midah of Mesiras Nefesh, which was manifested in their lives. So this is the midah of Malchus that Elimelech was looking for. And he knew it was in Moab. Because going back to the story of Lot, and Lot's escape with his daughters from Sodom showed tremendous Mesiras Nefesh. How so? Lot was a Talmud of Avram Avinu. But he didn't quite learn everything from Avram Avinu, and he left too early. You can have a fellow learning in yeshiva, and he's a Talmud of a particular Rosh Yeshiva, but in order to be a real Talmud, you have to be a Talmud Muvik. You have to sit there for a few years to learn a certain style of learning, a certain hashkafa. Lot didn't quite get it all. He left too early. He made the mistake of not realizing there has to be a lilmod before a lilamed. First you have to learn enough. Then you're able to go out and teach. Lot was a little bit into money. How do we know that? Pasuk says in Parashas Lech Lecha, Vayelech Avram kasher diber el Hashem. Avram went to Eretz Canaan like Hashem had told him. Vayelech he told Lot, and Lot went with him. Why did Lot go with him? Not because kasher diber el Hashem. Lot went with him va'Avram ben Chomesh shana v'shivim shana b'tzeis michorim. Because Avram Avinu was 75 years old. That's the reason why Lot went with him? Yeah. Because when your uncle is 75 years old and has no children, who's going to be the Yoresh? Who's going to inherit? So he had a little bit of a feeling of money that was encouraging him to go along with his Rebbe, with Avram Avinu. And then, after they got to Canaan, there was a Rav, there was a famine, they went down to Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim, we know, was a place that was shtufei zima, that was involved in tremendous bad behavior. And apparently he picked up a little bit of that feeling for znus in Mitzrayim. And then when he headed to Sodom, Rashi tells us in Perek Yud Gimel, Pasuk Yud, Vayisa Lotus Eina Vayaris Kol Kikar Yarden, and he saw Sodom. So Rashi says over there that the people of Sodom also were shtufei zima. Dorsho Lignai, Al Shoy Shtufei Zima Bochar Lo Lot. The reason why Lot chose to go to Sodom, because they too were very involved in znus. He picked up that feeling in Mitzrayim, and he continued looking for it when he went to Sodom. And Rashi quotes Reb Levi later in the story of Lot after he survived with his daughters, that somebody who's into znus, l'sof ma'achilin oso mibsaro. In the end, he will be fed from his own flesh, as he lived with his own two daughters. Lot thought that he could be Makari of the people of Sodom. He was taking with him all the Torah from Avraham Avinu, all of Emunah, all of belief in Hashem. But Lot had a misguided Mesiras Nefesh, much like his father did, Haran, way back by the story of the Kivshon Eish, where Haran said, if Avraham Avinu survives when Nimrod puts him in, so then I'll go through that test as well. And we know Haran died. So Haran had this misguided Mesiras Nefesh. I'll be Moser Nefesh if I'm going to win. So too Lot, same type of thing. He had the Mesiras Nefesh, but it wasn't fully there. But he tried. He was Yoshev Shar Sodom. He became a judge, and he sat at the gates of the city. Why do you sit at the gates of the city? So that anyone who comes into the city, you'll notice. And you could be Machnis Orach. You could bring home guests, as Lot did when the Malachim came. That's something he learned from the house of Avraham Avinu. In fact, Rashi points out, what did he feed the Malachim when they got there to his house? He fed the matzah, because it was Pesach. Avraham Avinu also fed the matzah. He fed the matzah. It was Pesach when they came. He was a Talmud of Avraham Avinu, but it didn't work out exactly the way Avraham Avinu would have liked. When the people went and said, give up your guests, he says, no, I want my guests, take my daughters instead. Not something that a Talmud of Avraham Avinu should really do. So when Sodom was destroyed, his daughters made a terrible mistake. They thought that all the men in the world must be dead. As the pasuk says, Ein ish ba'aretz lavo aleinu. There's no man in the world to live with us, to have children. They looked around. Sodom was destroyed. The cities in that neighborhood, in that area, were destroyed. And they thought to themselves, if our great tzaddik, our uncle Avraham, was still alive, he surely would have davened for Sodom. They knew he was such a big tzaddik. They didn't know he did daven for Sodom. Surely if he had davened for Sodom, he would have been successful. And he would have saved Sodom. Well, Sodom is destroyed. Must be that Avraham Avinu died of old age. Must be that our uncle already passed away. And because of that, they were able to make this mistake to think there was no one left in the whole world. These girls were tsunua. They grew up in the house of Sarah Imenu. As the pasuk says about Sarah's tremendous tznius, Hine no yodati. Behold, now I know. When Avram and Sarah were going down to Mitzrayim, so the Gemara says, Avram saw a reflection of Sarah as she was refreshing herself at some sort of a stream, some sort of a lake. Now I recognize that you're so beautiful. That's an amazing thing. Now he does, and he didn't know from before. In fact, the Marsha in Maseches Bava Basra, based on the fact that the Mishnah says in Maseches Kiddushin that there's an obligation for a person. The Gemara says Maseches Kiddushin, Daf Mem Aleph from Aleph, a person is not allowed to marry a woman until he sees her. That's part of Yahavta L'Reacha Kamocha. He has to know he's going to love her. He has to at least see her and know that he's going to like the way she looks. Rabbi Kiva Eger on the side points to a Marsha in Bava Basra that tells us that for 60 years, from the time that Avraham Avinu saw his wife to agree to marry her, until this story of Hinei No Yodati, where he saw her reflection on the way down to Mitzrayim, for 60 years he never saw her face. Again, that's not a tznius level that we're allowed to do. We don't wear burqas. But the Imos were on such a special high level that even in the house, they kept their face covered. The Marsha says 60 years he hadn't seen her face, and now he thought she's an older woman. He couldn't believe she was still as beautiful as when they originally got married. Well, when you're growing up in such a house with Sarah Imenu, so then these girls, Lot's daughters, also were very tsunua. In Sodom, they were Moser Nefesh, to remain Besulos. Pasuk says, Lo Yadu Ish, no man had ever been with them. And now they had to break their nature, because they felt the world is going to be empty. Lo so v'ra l'sheves yitzara, the pasuk says. It's an obligation on every person, even a non-Jew, to reproduce and to populate the earth. So they felt that they had to live with their father Lot. That was a very difficult thing to do. Besides being naturally difficult, they were tremendous tznuos, as we just said. To break that feeling of tznius took tremendous mesiras nefesh. And the Gemara in Bava Kama Daf Lamed Chesed Mid Beis says that this act that they did with Lot was a mitzvah. Tosfos says over there, L'shem Shomayim Nischavnu. Their intent was completely l'shem shamayim. The Gemara in Nazir and Daf Chav Gimel and Aleph also says they did it l'shem mitzvah. In fact, the Gemara says in Nazir and Daf Chav Gimel that since the older one did the mitzvah first, therefore she was rewarded that 4 extra generations of Jews came through her, because the first boy that was born was Moab. The next one was Ammon. Moab led to Rus, and as we said earlier, Rus led to David HaMelech, which was generations before Naamah, who married only Shlomo HaMelech, Naamah coming from Ammon and having a son Rechavam. So 4 generations more of Jews came from the girl who was even more Moser Nefesh, the one who wanted to do the mitzvah even more. You see, we're used to the fact that Rashi says in Chumash that the older girl was more of a mechutzif. She was the one who was the real bad guy. She convinced her younger sister to go along. And she even named the child Moav, as if to say, May of. This came from my father. She had such chutzpah to advertise to the world what she did. But according to, that's Rashi's pshat, but according to the way that Tosas learns the sugya, the way we're learning it now, that older one was a bigger tzaddikus. She was the one who was l'shem shamayim, she was the one who started it, and therefore she got the greater reward for doing it. In fact, what then does Moav mean? It's a famous story that Rav Moshe Feinstein wrote in the Hakdam. It's one of his svarim, that the reason why she named the child Moav was so that no one would think that this child came from immaculate conception. She didn't want there to be a Yashka. People would think of him as a god, that somehow he was born as a child of God. No, it was from my father. That's really what happened. And she was doing this again as part of her tzidkus. So this is all Mesiras Nefesh. To act against one's natural inclination was necessary at that point in time. It therefore sowed the seeds of Malchus into Moab, the elder son. And again, Elimelech, who was a Baal Mesorah, he knew all of this. And therefore, he went on a mission to find these seeds of Malchus, to find this essence of Mesiras Nefesh. If he could join the Mesiras Nefesh that existed somewhere in Moab with the Mesiras Nefesh that he had already in his whole family and his whole lineage, that might produce the Malchus that was needed in order to solve the problem of Vayhi b'mei Shvod HaShoftim. Be'ez Hashem, next time we will try to answer the third of the 3 questions that we asked, namely, how is he supposed to find this girl in Moab? Moab had a lot of people in it. How is he going to find the specific neshama that would be the one that he had to bring on board in order to complete his mission? Thank you very much.